Is Next.js going the wrong route? So right now, Next.js is a hot topic. We have the Next.conf right now. While I'm speaking, it's running. And many people think, hey, is Next.js actually the best way to run your React app? And there are a lot of other ways. And we as a company, we did the same. We needed to decide for our application we were building nearly 2 years now, 80,000 lines of code, just React front-end code. Is it actually the best idea to stay on Next.js to be future-proof? We put up the hypothesis that Vite might be the better way to go, the better route for us. And in this video, I will talk to you about the migration we just did for testing purposes and what the results are, in which direction we probably want to go. So stay tuned, we just go right in. So as context, we're talking about the 80,000 lines of code application. It is built in Next.js with TypeScript, 10-stack query, Zustand, and Tailwind. That's basically the tech stack. And we want to migrate that onto Vite with the very same thing. So it is the shortest way to migrate it. That is our target. The migration took 6 hours. That was the migration to the point where the application is running as before. Overall, the application took 1,200 hours to build. So just as a comparison, the migration was under 1% of the time. So it took us not even 1 day to migrate it, but there were only client-sided components. That is actually very important. We only used CSR so far. So that is the context. Now let's get into the metrics. So when we take a look at the typical build time, and we talk a lot about Turbopack right now in Next.js, Turbopack wasn't working for us so far. Let's take a look what happens with a new Next 15 stable version where Turbopack is actually stable, right? Building this very same application without removing components was 30% faster in Vite. So Vite is actually the faster builder. Then we have the bundle size for the pages. Let's take the initial start page. We have a difference of just 10% in favor of Vite, but that's not really a reason to do anything about that. Both are pretty much very good in what they do in that moment. When it comes to hot module replacement, Vite is very fast. So it is 70% faster. In average, it was 20 milliseconds. And with Next.js, without Turbopack, it was round about 80 milliseconds per HMR in average. And that's actually quite a lot, but we will see how that actually works out with Turbopack. Overall, these three metrics are actually quite interesting, but the numbers we have there are actually no reason to migrate from Next.js to Vite because it's not that much, to be honest. It is an improvement in developer experience, maybe a little bit faster CI/CD build times, but that's it. That's not a reason to change an ecosystem right now, especially when Next.js probably becomes faster as well. So let's talk about the migration. And the main 3 points which came up during the migration were actually the change from Webpack to ES modules, because that actually changes quite a lot. You do a lot of refactoring how you import files and how files are actually loaded to be properly bundled later on, replacement from import to require. And then we actually saw that we have a huge bundle size. You will see it here. And it was just a 3 megabyte file of JS. And then we needed to actually fix those things, especially in the router. And then it was okay. But it actually took quite a while to do this because we had several hundred files to change, but it actually was straightforward. Not a big of a deal. It was just a typical senior work in frontend, so nothing very special. Another thing was the replacement of the Next.js components and hooks, like link, like next image, use router, those kind of things, because they actually work differently than the React router. The React router is a synchronous thing, while the Next router is an asynchronous thing. So you needed to rebuild a lot of components to make it actually work as it was working beforehand. That was another big portion of the work we had during the migration. But it was quite straightforward, a little bit weird, but straightforward as well. And another portion was actually the TypeScript and linter settings were kind of different. Even though we took them with us, we updated a lot of things, and we actually needed to fix a lot there, but that was maybe because we had a different standard in Next.js, and I'm not really sure if that is actually quite common, or it was just because we were using that tech stack for quite a while now. I don't know. that was actually another portion of the things we have done. Okay, so was it hard to migrate that? No, it wasn't, but we were solely on client-sided components. So there were no server-side generated components, which means that it was very close to the original idea of React. And that was quite agnostic. So we could basically do that fast. It would be a different story if we were bound to the server-side idea of Next.js and not even to think about the full-stack approach, because the full-stack approach is often intertwined into the server-side generation, and that makes it actually quite a monolithic system. You don't actually get out of there anymore. Which means that a migration actually does only make sense if you have the majority of your components built in CSR right now. So that's actually how we came to the conclusion. This is how it was for us, so we were actually able to do that migration. And this is a good transition to get to the conclusion, because we really need to talk about this. Last week, I had this video brought out. Is it still worth starting with React in 2025? And yes, it is. But with what framework? When you are not in a migrating situation, but in a situation how you want to start your project, you need to define if you want to go into the server-side or even full-stack direction, then Next.js might be the better pick for you. If you want to stay agnostic, separation of concerns, those kind of things, or more open in how you want to approach your development, then Vite might be the best pick. When you are in a migration situation and you want to set up the hypothesis, how would it actually be to migrate to Vite or something different? When you are already on Next.js, you need to figure out how much stuff you have already done with server-side generation, middlewares, and a lot of intertwined functions, because that actually makes the difference. This is what you need to understand before you actually do that. Make a little test run if you can. Just pull over some pages, some components, and if it's actually working, then it might make sense. This is how we started, and then we pulled everything else over. And for us, it was good, right? Server-side generation, client-side generation, those are very different aspects how to work with React. I really mean it. So will we now stay with Vite because we have migrated, and of course that was effort? Do we stay now? That is not clear. That is not decided. So actually, it would be good for us to change to Vite, because the agnosticism, separation of concerns is exactly what we need. We have a separated backend. We have a GraphQL API. We have multiple clients in the future which are working with the application. So it might make sense to have that. Another aspect is that Vite feels newer and more modern because it uses ES modules, and ES modules feel more native in the JavaScript world. So it feels a little bit like Next.js is lacking behind in terms of modern ways of working with JavaScript. On the other side, Next.js wasn't bad until so far, so we actually were happy with that. And another aspect is that we actually want to go next year with our SaaS platform onto the CMS market as well. Next.js would probably be the better choice than Vite, even though Vite could do the same, but it's not built in. So we need to find out if Vite is actually as good as Next.js when it comes to server-side generation, and that this doesn't become the very same story than in Next.js, because if it's the case, I can stay with Next.js. So final decision, not decided right now, probably in the next days, probably next week, but I will write about that on Sunday on my blog, the detailed version of what I've just talked about. I invite you to read that, link in the show notes. Would be nice to see you there as well. If you have any questions, feel free to put it into the comments. I will answer it. I will go into detail. If the video was helpful for you, like and subscribe, and see you next time for the next video. Thank you very much for listening. Let me know what you think in the comments. Goodbye, everyone.